Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. Pete. Pete! Thanks. Thanks, Pete. Uh, anyways, welcome. So, today we are going to be talking about squares. Now, um, some of you have them, some of you don't. But the point is, we're going to talk about squares as far as what they're made of. Uh, but mainly, we're going to use squares to handle a nice little shadow and light class, right? We're going to talk about how light, where there's light, there's no shadow. And where there's shadow, it means there's no light. Pretty simple. Things can get very complicated, but I'm going to keep it very simple. If there's light, there's no shadow. And if there's shadow, there's no light. All right? So, big day. Nice class. Real quick. Let's get to it. Welcome. So, this is Autodesk Sketchbook. Actually, I think the company just turned it to Sketchbook. No more Autodesk. It used to be free. I think it's not anymore. I'm not sure. It's not very helpful, am I? But I can say that the apps are free. If you have an Android tablet or an Apple tablet or phone, you can get this in the store, just fine for free. If you want it for Windows or Mac, now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because it's showing up from the official website as $20 now, $19.99 or something like that. Yeah, there it is right there. So it shows up as that. It's an awesome program. So if you have it, give it. They did a lot of work in here. But I'm sure, you guys are tech savvy enough. You guys, you can probably just Google whatever you need for free, if anything. But I suggest buying it if it's not free. It's a one-time fee, right? I paid for it years ago. Then it became free. And I think it's not free again. That's the way the world works. Everything's a circle. Speaking of circles, let's talk about circles. But before we talk about circles, let's talk about squares. Squares, my friend. Squares are everywhere. Squares are everywhere. Squares are on me. Right? Undo. We're going to talk about shadows, right? We're talking about light and shadows. So because we're going to be talking about light and shadows, I feel it's easy to talk about light and shadows with a square, right? Or rectangle or something that has sharp lines and sharp corners, right? So this is a square. This is two-dimensional. There's an up and there's a sideways. Dimension number 1, dimension number 2. 2 dimensions, right? Once we start giving it depth, we just gave it a third dimension, right? Dimension number 3, or 3D. 3D. Yeah, that's what that means. Dimension, third dimension. So, with a 3D square, and we talk about light and shadows, right? It's pretty easy to see that the light is here, the light is not here, right? It can't hit this because the light's over there. So this is shadow. Right? That's shadow. And if we take that and say this is on a floor, right? This is the plane in the background. Here's the floor that it sits on, right? You can kind of go ahead and make another little square on the ground, because that's the shadow that the square is making, for example, right? So you can kind of tell light hits here, light does not hit here, right? Because the light's over here. So pretty simple. You can tell from a cube, from a square, turn into a cube by giving it a third dimension, right? 3D. This is where the shadow is, because this is where the light is not hitting. Get it? This is where the light is hitting. Maybe the light is actually behind the box, which means this side will get some shadow. You know what I mean? Makes sense, right? So from cubes or rectangles or anything that's straight line like this, very simple straight lines, we can imagine where the light and the shadow would be a lot easier than if we were trying to do a circle, right? So we have a square that we turned into a cube, because squares are 2D, cubes are 3D, right? So if we still have the light coming from this way, that means this side has light, and maybe the top does. But if the light is behind, like we did over here on this example, right, then that means this is the side that has shadow, because this is where the light is not hitting. Get it? Let's do another one just in case. Right? So we have a square. Let's make this one a little bit crooked. 2D. 1 dimension. 2 dimension. 3D. 3 dimension. Right? 3D square is a cube. Light is here, just like that one. But you know what? Let's undo. The light is actually up here, right? So let's say the light's up here. The light's hitting here, which means it is not hitting here. But it's not hitting here also because it's in the back, right? We said it was in the back before. It's in the back now. So in this example, there's only one side that has light. This side has 2 sides that has light. Right? And by practicing light with a square or cube, which is pretty easy, because like I said, it is light or is it not light, right? It's hitting it or it's not hitting it. We can kind of start using that for a ball, right? Light is hitting up here. Light is not hitting down here. So that means all of this is in shadow and the ball is on the floor, right? So all of this is in shadow. But we're not going to mess with this right now. Focus on the cubes. Focus on the cube. Focus on the cube. 3D squares. 3D squares, best friend you'll ever have. 3D squares, always best. And why, you might ask? Let's just say you're doing a city, right? Here's a building. Cool. Here's another building. Cool. Here's another building. Right? Okay, you got some buildings. But now here's a city. Here's some buildings. You see how different that is now? Here's the sun. Here's some shadow. It doesn't have to be black. It could be a darker color of whatever color you color these squares. It could be a different shade of a color, right? So if it's a green, maybe this green has a little bit of blue. I don't know, right? And then these buildings are casting shadow. So you can see how it's like popping out a little better. Just some squares. Put some squares in here. Put some more squares in here. Put some squares in here. Maybe this light is off. Put some squares in there. Pretty easy. Maybe the buildings. Check this out. Maybe the buildings are like this. Practice squares. I'm telling you. You're going to need them everywhere. Squares are the best. Squares are the best. The best. Practice them. They're going to help you out. They're going to give you shadows. They're going to give you light. They're going to give you angles. All kinds of stuff. So, cars. You can start off with a square. What else? Houses. Start with a square. Buildings. Start with a square. Do all kinds of stuff. Squares are amazing. And so are triangles. And that's next week episode, alright? Next week we're going to talk about triangles and the 3D version of a triangle, which is a cone. So stay tuned. Literally. TV. Stay tuned. And I'll see you next week.